the way that our society and education system is set up is that it funnels us from an early age into a career that we have to decide upon when we're young. And, in some cases that works for people, especially if you want to be something like a doctor or something. It's like a calling for you, and it's a long journey to learn it. But I'd say for most people, it's probably not the thing that they actually want to be doing. But unfortunately, they're in it now, and the longer that you spend in it, the harder it becomes to break away, because you get a promotion or a new desk, or you get more money, or there's a goal, you're building a pension pot, and then you have a family or a mortgage, and suddenly you need that like steady income to pursue, to keep on going in life. You just need to keep doing this thing that you maybe don't really love. And I can kind of relate to it myself, because I was in that situation. I worked in a kitchen when I was at school at night as a dishwasher, and then when I left school, I just started working in that kitchen full time. And so I became a chef there, and then I became like kind of entwined within this business. The problem for me was there wasn't even the promotions or the big salary. All there was just hard work. And at that time, that was my reality. That was just what I did. I worked there for years, all through my 20s, and I had aspirations to do other things, but I didn't do them. I didn't really have the time or energy. On my days off, I'd go to the cinema or I'd get drunk, and I abused my body and mind for that whole time. I was very unhappy, and I always had a passion for films. I watched 3 films a day back then, and I started to realize that it was a thing that you could be, was a filmmaker, a director. And so I tried to get into film school in my mid-20s, and I got rejected twice. And of course that then was like a message to me saying, just forget it, mate. Like, it's not going to happen. It's not, you're stuck here, and that's fine. And I could have quite easily just continued on that path, but I became like even more galvanized by that. I thought, like, fuck that. So I got a camera. This is back when the 7D and the 5D were kind of changing like indie filmmaking. And so I got myself a Canon 7D, and I became quite obsessed with learning how to use a camera. I had no idea. I didn't know anything about photography or anything. And photography became a passion of mine for a while, and landscapes, and then film photography and portraits and lighting and all that. I became obsessed. And then I got to the point where I had to get out of the kitchen. So I left the kitchen one day. No plan, I just left. And I went around every production company in Edinburgh asking if I could work for free. And one of them got back and let me come along, and so began a great, relationship. I worked there for 8 or 9 years on and off. And I started off as an unpaid production assistant, and I ended up being, post-production producer on some of their TV shows, and I got to work with like hugely talented and experienced people who'd worked on Star Wars and Indiana Jones, all that kind of stuff. I learned so much from all these different roles, and I always knew that if I wanted to be a director, I would really like to know the ins and outs of like every role on a film set. So in that time, that's what I was learning. And I also became the in-house like video shooter and editor for them, for the sort of smaller corporate stuff and things. So I learned so much in that time, but I fell into a similar trap again. Even though I was in a filmmaking environment now, I had no control over what I did. I had no creative input at all, and I still just had to work 9 till 6, Monday to Friday. It was different from the kitchen, but it was just the same in some ways. I never had any time to pursue these creative projects that I wanted to do unless I shot something on the weekend or something. I never had any time to, for any of that. And so I eventually, again, took that next step. And when I did, a whole new world opened up. So I became a freelance filmmaker and video maker. I make videos for clients. That's how I make my money. And then I make and direct and write short films. I'm currently working on producing a 6-part series, and I have all these different things going on. But now that I'm a freelance filmmaker, I've got control over that time. So even in my first year after I left working in the production company, I made double the amount of what I made on my last year in the production company, but I only worked half the time. And so instantly I felt like I'd unlocked some kind of cheat. It was like, wait a minute, double the money, half the time. I mean, that doesn't really sound real. That sounds too good to be true. And so as you can imagine, I was very excited by that. Then I had my little girl as well. And so now I have time to make money doing the work, which I love anyway and is creative, but I also have all this time that I can delegate to hanging out with my daughter and now my son as well, and also working on all these creative projects. So the interesting thing when I think back on that journey is that I never really knew what the next step would be after the step that I was taking. So when I left the kitchen, I had no idea where I was going to end up. I didn't know what a production company even did. But then fast forward a year from there, I was embroiled in all this big commercial world of shooting and working with all these really talented people, and they were telling me these stories about meeting Jack Nicholson and all this kind of stuff. And that was crazy. And suddenly I was thinking, right, I'm living the dream here. I'm learning about movies and you know, all the elements that go into ads and movies and, you know, all that world. And I loved it. It was fascinating. But then, yeah, that started to, you know, creep in, that feeling that I wasn't making any more steps forward. So then when I took the next step forward and I went freelance, I had no idea that I could engineer my life in this way. But here I am. And so the place that I'm at now is, I feel like I've found a steady flow of work as a freelance video maker, and I'm getting a lot of time to work on all my creative projects, but I've also always fancied teaching all the stuff that I've learned, because for me, I spent a good 10 years learning how to do what I do now, my craft now. I mean, I'm still learning every day, but 10 years before I became a freelance filmmaker, you know, I could have made that jump after 2 years and learned a bit more on the job, and it would have been different, but it probably would have been just as good. But what I would like to do, and I've always liked the idea of teaching people, is to offer someone that path, but like condensed into what they need to know, you know, rather than everything all before you start. Learn what you need to know to get started, and then you can develop as you go. In the description below, there's a little guide where I've tried to do a very, very basic version of this, where we go from day 1 with nothing, no experience at all, to day 30 as a filmmaker with their first paid client. So if you're interested in that kind of little experiment, you don't have to quit your job or anything, but if you've ever been interested in pursuing a career that's similar to the one that I'm talking about, then that may be a good place to start. As I mentioned, I'm also working on a course that teaches all of this stuff, and so if you're interested in that as well, subscribe to the channel. There'll be more news to come out about that later. And yeah, I suppose all I've got left is to just give you a little bit of an insight into what I think about life now. And it might sound a bit cliche, but we really do only get one go at this. And my mum, when she was still alive, she used to say to me, you're a long time working. And it took me a while to realize what she meant, but what she meant was, you pick something and then you're going to be doing it likely for the rest of your life, if that's the way it pans out. So make sure that you're doing something that you love. And you know, that sticks with me every day now. I just think that if I'm not doing something I love and I'm passionate about, then I'm not stepping that next step forward. And it's impossible to look 5 steps down the line. All we can do is take that next step forward, because we don't know what's going to open up, you know, once we've left that ledge and jumped onto that ledge. So if you're in a similar situation, just think about it. Is that comfortable salary and that pension pot or that corner office or whatever is going on in your world or where you work. Is that what you want to be doing? Because, for instance, if you're watching this video, then you've probably had a thought about a more creative lifestyle. And so, is it worth the pension and the comfort? I think we all know that sometimes we need discomfort and we need to embrace that discomfort. Like I went for a sauna this morning and then I had to go under the cold shower and I didn't want to do it. I know it's going to be bad, but I know that it's going to make me feel better. And it's like going to the gym or whatever, running, whatever, right? Things that enhance our lives don't come comfortably. So, you know, this is the most important part of it. This is the thing that you spend most of your time doing. Is the money comfortable? You know, is that comfort, is that enough? Does that justify not pursuing that thing that you wanted to do? And if you decide it's not, then like I urge you just to like make a change, go for it, take that first step. And if you want, I'll hold you accountable, follow along with me. I'm going to be talking about more stuff like this as we go on through this channel. And thank you very much for watching my first ever YouTube video. It's very weird talking to the camera. By the way, my name's Ross. Sorry, I never introduced myself. And look, I hope to see you on the next one. And remember, 30-day escape plan down below. And yeah, I'll see you there.